Hi, this is Mr. Procco again, and this is video 2 for the intro to using the machines in the Fine and Applied Arts department. So in this video, I wanted to quickly go over the main types of softwares that we'll be looking at while we're attempting to utilize these machines, and specifically the differences between the softwares and a little bit about them before we get started with any one of these specific machines. So first and foremost, we are using two main types of softwares: raster-based art, digital art making software, and vector-based digital art making software. And the huge core differences between these is that with a raster-based software, you're changing pixels, you're utilizing pixels, and manipulating those pixels as you draw, render, create things. And in vector-based artwork, you're creating paths and points to make your shapes and your designs. Raster allows you to blend, soften things, add effects to certain types of artwork, and create really nice images. Also, really importantly, it's the mode in which digital cameras take photographs. So photographs will be pixel-based and raster-based art. However, that doesn't really help us moving the machines around. The machines kind of understand points and directions on a grid. So in that case, having vector paths will help us sort of send the laser cutter or the router around specific paths to cut things out or manipulate things. So if we want the machines to move around and follow a path or cut a shape out, we're going to be using vectors. If we want to etch in or cut in an image or a picture or something that we actually draw, we're going to be using raster art. Now, raster art is usually associated with Photoshop. It's a photo editing software, but also a drawing program. It allows you to draw and change your pixels. It also allows you to bring in images, and those images can be with something like the laser cutter etched into the surface. So Photoshop is your main raster-based software. Along with that will also come its file types. And actually we'll look at this right now. So raster-based Photoshop, your alternatives being MS Paint, Online Editor, GIMP, Krita. There's a bunch of other ones out there. It will export as JPEGs, PNGs, GIFs, and PSD files, and other things like that. So that is raster software. For vector software, we're most likely going to be using Illustrator, which allows you to create points, which becomes paths. You can see it's really easy to make shapes and manipulate shapes. And this path can be understood by a machine that would circle this while it's cutting or removing material or carving or anything like that. So Illustrator is a shape-based, math-based software which can allow you to do that type of work. Illustrator file types will be saved as EPSs, AIs, which is native to Illustrator, SVGs, scalable vector graphics, PDFs, and other things like that. You can use Illustrator. You can also use some other art programs like CorelDRAW or Inkscape, and there's some other things out there. So that is the difference between the two main types of digital art that we'll be using, just so conceptually you understand why they do what they do as we're using the machine. Lastly, for the 3D printer and machines like that are additive, we'll be using 3D software. So you might be familiar with something like Tinkercad, which is a very simple 3D creation software which allows you to build with simple 3D blocks. We might also be using something like Maya, which is a little more advanced, but allows you to manipulate and bring in three-dimensional objects and work with it that way too. These objects then get sliced up and the information sent to the printers, which will then print it. So that's a quick overview on the softwares we'll be using. As we go through project by project, you'll see how these specific softwares relate to the specific types of machines that we'll be using.